Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And everyone, hey, welcome into the program. Today on the show, we are going to do computer and technology news. Yesterday, we, of course, had an entire segment dedicated to batteries. And, funny story, not saying that we had anything to do with it, but man, did we see a lot of stories today about batteries and lithium ion and new battery breakthroughs, all that kind of thing. We definitely saw an uptick in that here recently. So, if you want to find out more, check out yesterday's show, which you can find on YouTube, youtube.com/Computer America. And then, of course, computeramerica.com will also have links to everything, including podcasts, recent shows, past shows, future shows, everything Computer America related. Hey, Computer America has your back. So everyone, welcome into the program. And we have a lot of very interesting stories today. Everything from Utah being Utah and banning pornography on cell phones. I'm very curious how they're going to actually enforce that. That's probably the most interesting thing. There's also big news out of Intel and what they're doing just a couple of weeks after they were even eyeing stopping manufacturing altogether. Looks like instead they're going to be investing $20 billion into some new production facilities in the United States, which is amazing. That's definitely what you want to hear. There's that and more, recent hackings, and of course, Congress is grilling U.S. internet giants over disinformation. Once again, I'm curious how they're going to enforce that, but all that and more, and tons of different stuff. Everyone, it should be, it should be a pretty good show. So yes, and billion with a B, of course. Everyone, why don't we go ahead and get started with computer and technology news, and let's go ahead and get started. So everyone, I think that the first story is, hey, we're just going to lead with Intel. Intel is one of those companies that they have definitely been stuck for a number of years. AMD has definitely been on the rise. You have other chip makers like Samsung, TSMC, and I think there's one called Global Foundry, which I had just heard about today, that have been making chips and making them better and faster and all that good stuff. Well, Intel is, they're improving year over year. You can't deny that. Their ability, though, to make the latest and greatest chips has definitely declined. And now Intel, hey, we're going to see what they can do. And a lot of this should kick off in 2023 after they get everything in place. So they're going to start building the facilities and hopefully start producing chips soon. Now, this was all said during the Engineering the Future event this morning, in case you missed it. I sure did, but still, I like the news that came out of it. And Mr. Gelsinger, he is the CEO of Intel. And by the way, if you don't recall him, he was big back in the 90s and, kind of the formative years of Intel. He, late 80s, early 90s. Served in a number of different capacities, but he was also an engineer. He was an actual technical person, as opposed to someone from the financial side, legal side, or someone from the outside. So a lot of people looked at that and they said, well, maybe Intel can be Intel once again. And his idea was part of an IDM 2.0 strategy for Intel, which is what they led with. And it is made up of three different parts. First, of course, you have the in-house manufacturing, which will continue to be a key part, which is great to hear. Once again, a couple of weeks ago, some investors that had dropped a bunch of money in, had like 5% of the company, which is a lot of Intel. They were trying to push Intel to stop making chips altogether, simply do marketing, packaging, distribution, that kind of thing, and of course work on its AI and other projects that Intel had been working on, and leave that, and contract out with TSMC. But that would have left this incredible problem with the global, not really the global economy, but like the global tech supply chain, which is everything goes through South Korea, Taiwan, parts of China, and Japan. Like that's Southeast Asia was going to have every single computer component, or I'm sorry, every single computer assembled was going to have a part from that place. Like if God forbid, a natural disaster happened, or any kind of economic or social unrest happened, then yes, the whole world would suffer for it. So, to not put all the eggs in the same basket, Intel is stepping up, and they're going to increase production of chips made here in the United States. Second is of course going to be expand the use of external foundries. So including TSMC, Samsung Global Foundries, they're actually going to use those companies to help provide chips for some of their key components, including CPUs, laptops, and all that good stuff. So they're going to increase manufacturing. This may confuse some people. They're going to increase manufacturing, invest billions into new facilities to make chips. But at the same time, to stay competitive and to continue to operate, they're going to, they're going to pay their competitors to actually make the chips that they currently cannot. But they're hoping in the next couple of years, they're of course going to do that. And then the third is something that they're calling the foundry services, which, much like Intel, contracting these other companies that are direct competitors to make their own chips, they are going to, in the next couple of years, open their doors and say, hey, we can make chips for other commercial customers. And that's going to include cell phone makers, laptop makers that may even be partners. They've mentioned partners with IBM, Qualcomm, Microsoft, Google, and more. And all of those, of course, make hardware, and something that Intel wants to be a part of. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of competition lately. AMD has been, doing very, very well. Apple and their new M1-based chips are supplanting Intel in all of Apple's products. So, obviously, they have been floundering for a number of years. But this is definitely bold and a good kind of reset for Intel. I'm very, very happy to hear that Intel and their CEO, they're not just, trying to make little tweaks saying, we're going to focus on a new marketing strategy and we're just going to do that. No, they're doubling down on manufacturing in the US. They're investing heavily to get that done. And then, of course, to stay competitive in the short term, they're going to contract out with companies that can provide the chips that their opponents are, or not really opponents, but their competitors are currently serving. So it's awesome to hear. And it honestly sounds like the perfect recipe for what needs to be done. Now, obviously, this is going to come at a huge expense for Intel. I hope that they can manage it, but you know what? They say that things like the foundry services, so making chips for other people in the same sector, could open up new avenues for companies to source the chips that are essential from everything from video games to new cars. And by the way, there's an article that we did not pick up, but due to the increased shortage, I think it was Hyundai and Toyota had to actually cut production of their cars. And that's pretty crazy to think about, that, computer chips are halting production of, cars and trucks and things that you wouldn't really associate with there being a shortage. You think that if you have a customer like Hyundai or Toyota or, BMW or Daimler, whatever it may be, you assume that these companies can get the parts because they're huge companies, they're huge customers. not so much. There's definitely a demand, there's definitely a need, and Intel's own chief during this event, this one out from the BBC, essentially, doubling down and, hey, is just saying, this article right here from BBC News, and saying that there's too many chips made in Asia. And I don't think the problem is, because there's such a demand, I don't think the problem is how many chips are being made. It's just that there's no diversity. There's no sourcing. There's no difference in it. And by the way, they also mentioned that these foundries, or, these new factories that they're making, are going to be part of Arizona, and they're also improving or expanding the facilities in Ireland as well. They're saying that United States, Canada, parts of Europe are all going to see increased expansion. So with that being said, and by the way, after just taking it out of Intel for so long, I want people to realize it's kind of like picking on Comcast for cable subscription numbers. And, yes, they are technically bleeding customers every single month, but, they still have a huge amount of subscribers. And, they're not as in trouble, but, the trends are trends. I want to highlight that with Intel. And this has to do right here, this little chart right here from Mercury Research, saying CPU chips from October to December 2020. And this is what I really want people to know, is that when it comes to desktop PCs, still 80% of computers still have an Intel processor running them. And then you have mobile PCs, laptops, and not tablets or anything like that, but just laptops, 81% still have Intel. And then the servers, so things that would run, Microsoft Azure Cloud, Amazon Web Services, things like that. The computer servers are still 93%, which actually seems so low. I did not know AMD had any kind of market share when it came to servers, but still, 93%, which is a very lucrative market, still use Intel chips. They have slid. They are, they have definitely lost some of their market share, but they're still, 4 times bigger than the next leading competitor. Mobile, they have, they obviously have work to do with Apple, starting to edge in there. But overall, Intel is still in a position of power, and this kind of investment is just what we want to see. Now, all that being said, we'll go ahead and follow up on that more as things progress. But Intel, honestly, great leadership. That is just what we wanted to see from that kind of announcement. So, why don't we go ahead and continue on here? Just real quick, we saw a story about Slack, which we don't use here in the office, but some people do. Slack said that they have introduced a new direct message system. And then minutes later, they pull it. This one from The Verge, and Slack quickly removes the ability to message strangers with DM invites over harassment concerns, saying that the feature let anyone send you a message, which, other social media, Slack is a bit different because it's meant to be teams and organizations trying to organize their employees and things like that. It's much more productivity focused, but other systems like Facebook and Twitter and other social media at least let anyone message you, but they kind of filter it out a little bit. It looks like Slack had something a little different, and hey, it's already been pulled. They said Slack became a public messaging platform this morning with a wider rollout of new cross-organizational direct messaging feature, and now it's already taking steps to mitigate the dangers of operating such a platform without well-thought-out moderation protections. You gotta moderate. The The company says in response to concerns the feature could be used to send abusive messages and harassment with relative ease, it's now disabling the option to send a message alongside an invite. That way, if someone knows your email address, they can't spam your inbox with potentially abusive messages. Why do we always have to, why do we always have to protect people from the worst of people? It's horrible. The internet really does bring out, it brings out the best in people, but also brings out the worst in people. I will be fair on that. Now, so Slack, they had the company's vice president release a statement saying that after rolling out Slack Connect DMs this morning, we received feedback that our users about how email invitations to use the feature could potentially be used to send harassing messages. We are taking immediate steps to prevent this kind of abuse, beginning today with the removal of the ability to customize a message when a user invites someone to Slack Connect DMs. There you go. Yeah, and they even have a tweet out here, some of the feedbacks, this image here, saying that once you accept this invitation, and of course people, it wasn't a generic, accept my invite so we can connect and talk on Slack and that kind of thing. No, you could have a custom Slack message, and that message, that, the label on the invite was essentially how you would harass people, and you can of course bombard them constantly with it. Yeah, and wow. Yeah, there we go. So being able to customize seems like that was what was taken away. And yeah, there are new concerns popping up too, such as being able to view whatever Slack groups individuals are part of, either paid or free. If that person happens to accept an invite from someone using Slack Connect, and while Connect is generally designed for enterprise users who pay a premium, a standard user can cost as little as $8 per month, and that suggests someone could exploit these issues rather easily and cheap if they choose to do so. So obviously, the main issue was being able to send customized messages straight to someone's email, although at the same time, I feel like you could do that anyways. If you have their email address, you could harass them anyways by sending them emails. This doesn't seem all that much different. Maybe the Slack community is just that much more toxic. Yeah, and I guess and they said that the main concern is that it did not have a robust opt-out protections for individuals and users, and no way to easily prevent someone from spamming you with email invites. In my mind, the easiest way to mitigate this would have been to just put, Slack's email address. Yeah, and what they're saying here is that by customizing it through Slack, it would bypass most filters or inbox protections or things like that. But if this really became an issue, just filter out feedback@slack.com, and there you go. You wouldn't see anything from Slack, but at the same time, you wouldn't see the stuff you don't want to see. So, if someone has your email address, though, I feel like they already have the ability to, kind of mess with you to a certain extent. I don't know. It was pretty crazy. So, yeah, good luck with that. Our next story number 3 that we're going to jump right into. Make sure we have plenty of time for this one. Let's do the craziest one of the day. And, pornography is always a touchy subject when it comes up on the show, but it's one worth talking about, and not in any great detail, but in detail when it comes to banning of communication, and especially as it relates to pornography, because pornography is something that people are embarrassed about, they're offended by. That's it's kind of like defending prisoners. When it comes to like the justice system, it's like, why would you defend prisoners? They're guilty. They're in prisons. Why do they need protections? Why do they need, who wants to go easy on felons? That's such a hard sell to do to a voting public. And I think pornography and terrorism are kind of handled the same way. It's one of those buzzwords that's instantly recognizable. Everyone is embarrassed, ashamed, or just off-put by it. And so any way to mitigate these things, even though, let's just say the rates of pornography are going up skyrocket, especially during the pandemic, but still, even so, it's an easy way to pass legislation whenever you want to invoke it. Well, Utah went and did it. Banned it on cell phones. They said that the governor of Utah has signed legislation requiring all cell phones and tablets sold in the conservative state to automatically block pornography. I am very curious how they're going to make this work. But still, critics are calling the divisive move a significant intrusion of the First Amendment right to free speech. And they claim that the measures would send an important message about preventing children from accessing explicit content. I will say, there are much easier ways to prevent pornography getting in the hands of kids than doing it on a legislative level, such as OpenDNS is a pretty good solution. If you haven't heard of it, check that out. There's, of course, parental filters. Every device already comes with parental controls. And, there's so many ways you can, of course, talk to your kids. That's always a difficult one. There are so many ways to make sure this isn't really an issue, but it's Utah, Utah is going to be Utah. No immediate step towards implementation will be made unless 5 other states enact similar laws, a provision introduced to address concerns that it would be difficult to implement. So they're waiting on other states to do this. Maybe they can get 5 other states. I don't know. Alabama's looking a little iffy. Trying to think off the top of my head which states might do this. I don't know. New Hampshire? Who knows? Still, it's an issue, saying that this is the latest move in Utah's legislative campaign to restrict the availability of pornography. Now, with that being said, the American Civil Liberties Union of Utah said that the constitutionality of the bill was not adequately considered and that it will likely be argued in court. Very much so. It seems like it's not really an issue until 5 other states do it, and 5 other states are not going to do this. Also, I'm sure that by the time they even go around to find 5 potential other states to do this, this will have been in court long enough and probably argued down, again, based on First Amendment rights. Critics of the measure, they say, had called the governor to veto the measure over concerns about free speech implications. And they mentioned addressing the constitutional question. Someone said that the adults can deactivate the filters. Experts maintain that it still raises legal concerns. Trying to take this to the next logical step, today pornography, to protect the kids. And let's say next, for national security reasons, they decide that websites from outside the United States are potentially harmful and spread bad information. Let's say, anything that these people do not agree with, they feel doesn't need to be seen. Where does that string stop getting pulled? Where does that thread stop, and where, kind of what is the cutoff? I think that overwhelmingly, the usage rates of pornography on devices speaks more than, this one state's ability to block it. And by the way, again, they aren't even going to be able to for a long time. So with that being said, let's see. So in terms of future enactment of the latest law, there is some precedent. 2016, more than a dozen states have followed Utah's example and declared porn a public health crisis, saying that only 5 need to follow the lead this time. But, declaring something a crisis and actually legislating a change to devices would be it's a very different thing. And even on top of that, the devices, would, like, someone could just go to another state, order it from Amazon, order it from someone else to, purchase their device. How many devices are really sold, walking into a store and purchasing a tablet, a smartphone, a computer, whatever, and how many people just, order off Amazon or order it off Best Buy or what have you to, and have it delivered to their door. It's not going to stop anything, and it further restricts the availability of information. Today, again, it's information that no one can, with a straight face, go into a public square and defend. But hey, maybe that's next. Today, pornography. Tomorrow, who knows what. So with that being said, good luck, Utah. Making a prime example of what not to do. Okay. We have plenty of time for that. How about what not to do? Google. If they ever decide to, do something like, reducing the flow of traffic through their site, almost like a monopoly would, then they would be very silly to do that with all the antitrust talk going around. You would think. But this one from Insider today, and essentially saying that, well, check this out. Google hogs traffic for itself, according to data showing nearly 2/3 of searches ended without a click in 2020. And, and first of all, I gotta say the methodology for this data and, collecting the data and, kind of analyzing it was a little suspect. They mentioned that, they didn't take into account web searches that could possibly be redefined. Like, if you search for something and it just didn't, it didn't answer your question in the first couple of links. So you try another search a little bit more specific with, key phrases and things like that. It would still count that, it would still count that 0-click search as a search, even though you eventually did click a link for that search. You just had to, refine it a little bit. So that's one of the glaring problems with this study. And there are others. I'm wondering if, let's see. So yeah, the data, and I'm wondering if it was collected from things like smart assistants, which are getting more and more popular. They do search on, they do searches on the web, but that doesn't necessarily mean that anyone can actually physically click anything. That the data would just be scoured and served up to you. And I'm wondering if that counts as a Google search as well. Still, some of the findings were that they analyzed 5.1 trillion Google searches in 2020. The searches took place on 100 million plus panel of mobile and desktop devices. Okay, so mobile and desktop. And of those 5.1 trillion searches, 33% resulted in an organic click. 1.59% resulted in a paid search result, so one of the first couple of links to pop up in a search. And then, of course, beyond that, 64.82 completed the search without a direct follow-up click to another property. Searches resulting in clicks are much higher on desktop devices, and 0-click searches are much higher on mobile devices. There you go, 0. So people on mobile phones are probably looking up just very quick things. And, I think we've all done it, where you have a question, is where in the world is Sudan? And you just need to, just look at an image. You just need to look at the world, look at the map, but you don't actually need to click on anything. I think we've all had those questions that can be answered very, very quickly and don't actually involve clicking on anything. And then, of course, there's the other part that Google has been doing in the recent past, and that's the fact that, well, they've been serving up parts of people's websites that are, everything's tagged, everything's crawled over by bots, everything can be served up without actually clicking the link. Google will actually serve you up the information as extracted from the site that you normally would have clicked on. So that means that less people are getting traffic, but Google continues to keep the amount of traffic that they get. In fact, they get even more usability out of it. So with that being said, the takeaway is that in large number of cases, Google is directing its billions of search engine users and their valuable eyeballs to its own properties. Google, alongside Facebook, dominates the digital ad market in the fourth quarter and pulled in nearly $32 billion in revenue from such searches. Makes sense that Google would want to make their searches as concise and kind of self-contained as possible, because again, they're the ones who get to serve up the ads. Now, they say a major concern to Google critics will be the idea that the search giant is finding ways to keep people on its own properties, potentially at the expense of third-party sites and publishers, which, obviously, that's going to happen. Of course, Google is not a public utility. Google is not a charity. Google is not, a force for public good. They're a private company who long ago abandoned the idea of do no evil or, don't be evil. They abandoned that. Now they are they've always been a private company with, with shareholders and market value and a stock price to make sure it stays steady and healthy. So, yeah, it's, this was probably bound to happen. Now, one example that they give is for COVID-19 and this little graph right here, saying that Google search for COVID-19 deaths offers an example where the information is pulled directly from Wikipedia, World Health Organization, New York Times, and it's placed at the top of the page ahead of clickable links, essentially giving people the information. Like, that's the information that they're looking for, but at the same time, they don't really offer a click-through. They do source the information, but then let's say, the New York Times put all this effort into making these charts and graphs and all this kind of thing, but they never get the click-through. They never get the, the ability to see that. See the traffic that they are probably deserving. Now, Wikipedia is a bit of a different one because they are for the spread of, they're for the spread of information. They actually are a private organization that is meant to spread knowledge and information across the internet. Wikipedia should not be on the list of companies that should be complaining because, hey, people at Wikipedia, I'm sure, like the idea that the information is easy to access like that. But still, with that being said, in the last 3 years, Google's been overwhelming beneficiary of increasing worldwide search volume. And as the pandemic takes more people off their laptops and desktops and puts them back on their mobile devices, the zero-click search problem is likely to rise even more. So with that being said, Google dismissed the research, highlighting a number of reasons search queries did not result in clicks, including people looking for quick facts, like I just mentioned, and then also to reformulate their queries, as in, need to get a little bit more specific, and people navigate directly to apps, which makes sense. If you have an app that serves your mapping needs, serves your your quick questions, whatever, you will be redirected to an app that can better provide the information for you. All that being said, Google mentioned we care deeply about the open web and have continually improved Google search over the years, helping businesses, publishers, and creators to thrive. While we do show website links for many queries today, and they are the most helpful response, we also want to build new features and organize information in helpful ways. The best solution in my head is that, and by the way, Google is under pressure over the way it presents results in the US and EU. Specifically, its one boxes, the prominent squares of text or images that pop up when you search. Example, such as a holiday destination or weather in a particular city. So, those giant chunks of information that more often than not are exactly what you're looking for. That's what they're in hot water of over lately. I wish that, and by the way, there are examples, like if you type in to a Google search, flights to Tahiti or whatever, and it will pull up a Google Flights, but it will also pull up links to all the other travel services out there. But Google Flights will be in the big block of text, ready to go, ready to serve your needs. The way that people use Google is probably pretty anti-competitive. Google is obviously going to redirect you to its own services. It's not like they're going to send you over to Kayak or something like that. At the same time, though, they are continuing to foster that idea that you don't need any other service other than Google. And that could definitely come back to bite them in any kind of antitrust litigation that's going to be coming in the next couple of years. Now, with that being said, I like the one boxes. I like the way that they display information. I like that they are quick. You don't have to chase down links and chase down the information. No, it's quick, it's convenient, pops up right there. I wish that if they source a graph or source information from weather.com, from, the New York Times, that in that block of text, I wish that counted as traffic related to the New York Times. The person who made the information, made the chart, made the graph, made the data that is being shown to people is, that they're being compensated or at least acknowledged more than a small source link at the bottom. Maybe that should count as a click. Maybe that should count as, a different kind of click, that isn't as expensive as a click, but, works the same way. Of all the things I've heard, with Google stealing news stories and stealing headlines and things like that, of all the things I've heard, this may be one of the most valid reasons to not really appreciate that. So there you go. I think we're done with that story, but hey, those antitrust suits, they are definitely on their way. How about something cool? Something different. A piece of hardware that researchers are trying to use to get people to, who can't see, walking. And this one's very cool. This one is from Engadget. Mr. Chris Holt saying that the system uses a 4K spatial camera and Intel's tech for image processing. So not like, we're strapping LiDARs to blind people's heads, but we're getting close. Researchers at the University of Georgia have developed a backpack system to help vision-impaired wearers understand and navigate their surroundings. And with that being said, the backpack uses a Luxinus Oak D spatial camera, which has an on-chip Edge AI processor and uses the Movidius image processing technology. The 4K camera captures depth information as well as color images, and it's packed inside a vest or a fanny pack. Stylish. Good stuff. The system uses Intel's OpenVINO toolkit for interfacing, and it can run for up to 8 hours using a pocket-sized battery housed in the fanny pack. The backpack holds a lightweight computing device with a GPS unit, so getting super specific. And yes, the blind will be the most technologically advanced out there. Now, they mentioned also a Bluetooth earpiece allows the wearers to control the system with their voice. They can use it to describe their surroundings or save GPS locations with a specific name, such as, favorite restaurant, park, what have you. The researchers say that their system can detect obstacles, including overhead ones, so don't want anyone getting hurt here, and tell the wearer where they are through audio prompts. It can also read traffic signs and identify changes in elevation. It can, for instance, inform the wearer that there's a stop sign by a crosswalk or let them know that there's a curb in front of them. Definitely something that if you are blind, any way to get some of that independence back. And while this probably won't be perfect, I'm curious, and here they give an example of someone walking through a neighborhood with cars and curbs and traffic and stop signs. But I'm curious about, pedestrian crosswalk, like the lights, for walk or don't walk. I'm wondering if it can capture something like that. And then, of course, in a more complex setting, is it going to be able to track all these things? Because a car, a sidewalk, it could be optimized for that. But there's going to be a lot of situations where this needs work. And luckily, one of the best ways to do that is, open sourcing. They're going to open source this project so that anyone can build one of these devices, use the software, and hopefully get some more data and get blind people walking, get them more independent. It's really awesome to see. Okay. Speaking of free and free software, this next story, something about the open source and the free software community just tickles me because they do such good work, and so many, we owe them such a measure of gratitude because they really do a lot for, really the sake of technology, for the betterment, really for the betterment of everyone. Well, there's some new drama coming up. Saying this over at Ars Technica, free software advocates seek removal of Richard Stallman in the entire Free Software Foundation board. That's a big change. Let's find out why. Now, they said that Richard Stallman's return to the Free Software Foundation's board of directors has drawn condemnation from many people in the free software community. They have an open letter today calling for Stallman to be removed and the FSF's entire board to resign. And they mentioned that Richard M. Stallman, frequently known as RMS, has been a dangerous force in the free software community for a long time. Someone mentioned that he has shown himself to be misogynistic, ableist, and transphobic, among other serious accusations of impropriety. These sorts of beliefs have no place in free software, digital rights, and tech communities. They mentioned that we call for the entire board to step down as well, and for RMS to be removed from all leadership positions. And they mentioned that the letter signers include Neil McGovern, who is the GNOME Foundation Executive Director and the former Debian project leader, Deb Nicholson, General Manager of the Open Source Initiative, Matthew Garrett, a former member of the FSF Board of Directors, 7 of the 8 members of X.org, as well as Foundation Board of Directors, Alana Hashman of the Debian Technical Committee, Open Source Initiative, the Kubernetes Project, more from the Debian Project and GNOME Foundation. Tons and tons and tons of people who are very prominent in the open source community in their own right. They say that we urge those in position to do so to stop supporting the Free Software Foundation, refuse to contribute to projects related to FSF or the leadership, do not speak or attend at the events, and do not welcome them at your events in turn. We ask for contributors of free software projects to take a stand against bigotry and hate within their project. And let's find out. So, by the way, for a lengthy summary of events on his resignation that happened back in September 2019, they have an article that is linked to within this article. But essentially, Stallman resigned after the leak of an email about Jeffrey Epstein's whole thing in which Stallman objected to the use of the word assaulting and called it morally absurd to define rape in that way. And yeah, well, defending Epstein, of all the ways to mess up, boy, is that a low bar to not condemn Epstein. Crazy. Now, they mentioned that RMS, and this is again a summary of the allegations, RMS has a history of mistreating women and making them feel uncomfortable, unsafe, and unwelcome. Some of us have our own stories of our interactions with him, and things are not captured in email threads or on video. Stallman founded the FSF, which explains why he has the ability to, kind of make this comeback. He founded it in 1985 and served as its president until his resignation in 2019. Saying that, and by the way, the past weekend saying, I'm now on the FSF's board of directors once again. Some of you will be happy at this and some may be disappointed, but who knows? In any case, that's how it is. And I'm not planning to resign a second time. Boy, yeah. Stallman's announcement apparently came to as a surprise to conference organizers. The Free Software Foundation's official Twitter account posted a tweet saying that no Liber Planet organizers, speakers, award winners, exhibitors, or sponsors were made aware of his announcement until it was made public. Yeah, at least for now, Stallman's name is once again listed on the board of directors page, and yeah, until something happens, he's gonna be there. And let's see, board of directors. Yep, Richard M. Stallman. He is certainly there. Who knows? So, drama in the free software community. There's always drama in the free software community. It's a very tight-knit group of people who do amazing work. And you know what? Egos get bruised, reputations get tarnished, and there's always... Think of it like an office politics that anyone can be a part of. Anyone can be a part of that particular office's politics. Still. Okay, how about this next one? And it's kind of kind of a filler, but for anyone out there who likes high fashion, I'm sure you know the name Burberry. Burberry is, well, for I guess even their artists are getting a little stir crazy. High fashion is meeting video games, saying that Burberry designed skins for Honor of Kings characters. In Honor of Kings, unfortunately, I'm not too familiar. Probably a mobile game. Not that that's a bad thing, but yeah, just not on my radar. Still, players can buy clothes known as skins to adorn their in-game characters, and Tencent-owned developer Taimai Studios collaborated with the designer for its multiplayer online battle game, Honor of Kings. The new skins, which feature Burberry's signature trench coat and tartan, will be available in mainland China only. Gotta cash out. Saying that, quote, by allowing our Chinese customers to explore virtual products through the medium of online games, we can connect with our communities in a way that really resonates with them. Who is, of course, and those are statements from the president of Burberry in China, saying that we want to empower our community to explore their surroundings, whether it's online or offline. And by the way, Honor of Kings makes sense, mainland China. You know, what's super popular in China is not necessarily what's super popular elsewhere in the world, though I will say they're probably equally as popular because of all the mobile users in China. Still, Honor of Kings is similar to League of Legends or Dota 2, and Tencent's game, available for mobiles, has more than 100 million daily active users. By the way, if you ever want to go down a rabbit hole, check out Tencent. Check out who they fund, what they fund. Yeah, they actually have some investments in League of Legends and I believe in Dota 2 as well. They own their competitors, It's pretty crazy. Still, its popularity has led the technology company to limit the amount of time children can play each day, saying that these sorts of luxury fashion partnerships seem to be relatively confined to Asia for now, where European brands are particularly desirable. Who knew? It's about getting those characters in highly desirable, decadent fashion labels so that fans will look at them and want to emulate. As owning a Burberry coat or scarf in real life is a symbol of wealth or status, the same can be said for in-game. And by the way, if you're watching the video portion, you can see what the mock-up looks like. Yeah, I mean, it's a trench coat, it's Burberry, and quite honestly, when it comes to fantasy, because it's clearly some kind of druid or something like that, when it comes to fantasy and immersion, oh my god, does this take my immersion down to 0. It is absolutely horrendous. Not like that the designs are bad, although honestly the designs look a little generic for kind of Asian video games, or Chinese video games, but it just ruins the immersion altogether. Now, they say that Burberry's continued commitment to experiment with game, either by developing for their own in-house games or strategically partnering with organizations, demonstrates their eagerness to connect with a third of the world's population who identify as, well, they say gamers, people who play video games. Building long-term relationships with future consumers of Burberry is clever in terms of maintaining relevance for a heritage brand. Yeah, bleh, bleh. I don't give that response often, but yes, bleh is probably the best way to answer that. I'm very happy that it is confined to mainland China, for sure. Okay, this one can be quick, and then we'll move on to Congress and the internet giants and see what's happening there. That should be hopefully a pretty quick story. Just real quick though, Radio Shack, you remember them? You probably bought batteries from them back in the 90s. Well, that sure didn't stick around. And because it still has that name brand recognition, much like the ever accosted corpses found with Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, Radio Shack will suffer the same fate over and over and over again. This article mentioning from Adweek that Pier 1 Imports and Dress Barn, for example, will unfortunately suffer similar fates and be included in online shopping malls. Saying that anyone who's seen James Cameron's blockbuster The Titanic says that, and of course the story of the 1912 sinking of the Titanic will no doubt recall the wireless operator who stayed at his telegraph key sending distress calls even as the icy Atlantic encircled his feet. So here's an additional cocktail party fact or two. Operator's name was Jack Phillips, blah, blah, blah. And his place of employ, the radio room on the boat deck, was called a Radio Shack. Therefore, hey, Radio Shack gets its name from a sinking ship. And I gotta say, the article continues, but we're not going to be able to get to it. But still, Radio Shack is going to be resurrected as a place to do online business in a quote-unquote online shopping mall. This happens sometimes because, the trademarks, the patents, all that kind of thing, they are usually one of the last things that are sold off for a company, that especially is known for having lots of retail space. The retail space is sold off en masse. Other people pick it up for the cheap, and once they get rid of all the inventory, they get rid of their retail space, they get rid of their employees and all that kind of thing, and any cash on hand, the last thing you're left with are patents and trademarks. And then those get handed around like some, just horrible party favors. And yeah, Radio Shack has enough name brand recognition, much like Pier 1, that it's going to switch hands a number of times. To see a different example of this and what can happen, you can look at Nokia, which has switched hands many times and has shifted owners many times as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and switch on over from Radio Shack, which I said that was just a quick one. If you see them again, don't worry. It's probably nothing to worry about. We have time here if we're quick. Congress is grilling internet giants. So, of course, here you see Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, and Sundar Pichai, who are the CEOs of Twitter, Facebook, and Google. And they will testify before Congress Thursday, so tomorrow, on disinformation following a tense U.S. election. They said that the remote video hearing will be the fourth of Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg's and Jack Dorsey, and the third for Sundar Pichai. Hey, they're becoming experts. And they're saying that whether it be falsehoods about the COVID-19 vaccine or debunk claims of election fraud, these online platforms have allowed misinformation to spread, intensifying national crisis with real-life grim consequences for public safety and health. There you go. Now, they mentioned that, a recent backlash against tech behemoths, which dominate key economic sectors, has intensified as their influence has grown during the pandemic. Which, as we mentioned, these were trends that were already happening. It's just the pandemic accelerated certain areas' adoption much faster. So, yeah, this was going to happen anyways. It's just now painfully obvious. And with that being said, another big tech critic was recently appointed to an economic advisory post in the White House. Lots of antitrust lawsuits will be coming soon. Now, with that being said, stakes for the tech companies are high. Multiple senators back a Safe Tech Act, which would reform legislation favored by companies, which is meant to protect them from being held responsible for the content posted on their platforms. Redesigning Section 230 is going to take a much smarter brain than I have, which isn't hard, but you gotta have someone smarter than me, because the way that it's been held, places like Facebook, message boards, Twitter, Google, places like that have not really been held responsible for what they post or what users find on their sites. But at the same time, we do have it in good faith, and it's, nothing legislated, nothing codified into law. It's all kind of a gut reaction, what's acceptable and what isn't, based on each of these companies, that they self-police and they self-monitor. The problem becomes when you have billions of monthly users and sources of information that are not verified, and not even just like billions of users that are producing these, sometimes false accusations, mistakes, things like that. But then you let it go viral and it starts to explode on these different platforms. And the response is so much slower than the viral nature of social media. What do? They could be acting in good faith, and then at the same time, other people will say, well, you didn't act fast enough. And some people say you acted too fast, you're too stringent. Without any clearly defined what is acceptable and what isn't, we are relying on algorithms, robots, tech companies to make moral and ethical decisions for all of us. That was extremely highlighted in the most recent election over the last year of President Donald Trump's presidency, with claims that were not exactly based on science or fact, but still left up because of the source of the information. And then, of course, there was the reckoning that happened, over the course of a couple months, where they started to act much more stringently. And then, a lot of people said that they were overly reactive to messages being sent on social media. Section 230 at this point probably cannot exist, can probably not exist the way that it did before. But it does need to continue on in some form. I'm curious what they think should happen, how that should work out. I don't know. I don't have the answer, and I would really like to hear what other people think. But until then, everyone, that is the end of the show. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, that was a great show for computer technology news. If you want to find out more, computeramerica.com. Articles, reviews, links to social media, past shows, future shows, podcasts, which is simply today's show rebroadcast. If you didn't get a chance to listen to us on IRN, we highly recommend you check us out there. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to Computer America. Until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.